Welcome to iTalk, the new programme on Euronews where you get to ask the questions to Europe's decision makers. My name is Alex Taylor and I'm here to make sure you get the answers. You've been sending in your video questions this week for Kristalina Georgieva, the European Commissioner for International Cooperation, Humanitarian and Crisis Response. Delighted to have you with us here today for our very first programme, also because you've been recently elected not only the European Commissioner of the Year, but European of the Year. So thank you for being with us. Are you ready to answer any questions?
Of course I am, yes.
Right, let's go for the first question, which comes from Lyon in France.
Yes,
I have a question. I'd like to know how the European Union intends to respond to what has happened to the nuclear reactors in Japan.
Now, Commissioner, I know you were recently in Japan. First of all, what can we do to help, and what are the lessons we can learn from what you've seen?
The hit on Japan from earthquake, tsunami and the nuclear accident is very dramatic, and especially for a country where there are very sad memories from their exposure to nuclear. It is the third hit, the nuclear accident, that is creating most anxiety among the Japanese people. They are incredibly resilient, they're incredibly mobilized, and yet they fear for their livelihoods, they fear for the health of their kids. So what we do for them is to provide monitoring equipment, gear.
How much money do we have available, and who decides on the budget? Is it you directly?
Japan is a very wealthy country. For Japan, it is not so much a matter of money. It is a matter of solidarity from the rest of the world. What we are providing to Japan are two things: in-kind assistance, and we also contributed to the Japanese Red Cross 15 million euros, 10 million from the Commission. What I heard from the Japanese people is the following message. They say we need to rethink how we prepare for disasters. We need to rethink our energy strategy for the future. And I think it applies to them. It applies to us.
Well, of course, yeah. I'd like you to have a look at a picture. I'm sure you recognise this particular picture here. This is Kozloduy, which is the United States said it was one of the 10 most dangerous nuclear plants, and it's in Bulgaria, your country. They had to close it down before you came in. What lessons can we learn from what happened in Japan about our own nuclear situation in Europe?
Three lessons. First, that we have to invest a lot in stress tests and being sure that we understand the risks. Second, that we need to prepare our population. And three, look at how we can structure our energy so our dependence on what our population sees as a more risky source of energy is reduced. And, you know, we go to the basics, which is energy efficiency. We still, even in Europe, have a long way to go. The Japanese are saying, the Japanese, the most efficient nation in the world, have a long way to go. But also we need to look at, are there other alternatives that are safer, more secure for our people?
OK, let's go for a second question now from an Italian in Brussels.
Madame Georgieva, I'd like to ask, shouldn't we have had a European grant before this to stop all these immigrants landing on the Italian coast?
Commissioner, we get involved in conflicts which are outside of Europe, and we have to deal with the consequences of this. We don't seem to be dealing very well.
In the case of Libya, the European Union actually took the lead on providing financial assistance and also helping to take migrants back home, planes and boats, so we can decongest Tunisia and Egypt.
There's still a lot of them coming, though.
If you look at the numbers, though, those that are crossing the borders from Libya and then go home to Egypt, to Bangladesh, to Ghana, to Sudan are much more than those that go to Lampedusa. Lampedusa is a small island, so there, when you have 4,500 people, you can easily be overwhelmed, and that creates a question for Europe, how we can show solidarity and help Lampedusa, help Italy with the flow of migrants.
And how can we help
But a ticket home is the way we help for this wave not to flow into Lampedusa.
What kind of a budget do you have, and who decides directly to help in situations like this?
The humanitarian budget I'm responsible for this year is at the starting point 850 million euros. But if needs are higher, we can tap into the emergency reserve of the Commission. Last year, for comparison, we ended up spending 1.1 billion euros because it was a very tough year.
OK, let's go to a third question now, which comes from a French student.
Why does Europe have such trouble speaking with one voice on foreign affairs when the situation right now gives Europe an opportunity to position itself at the centre of the international stage?
There's various questions. Obviously, it's very difficult when you have so many different countries with different points of view to come to one common standpoint. And also, we don't always know whether it's you, for example, in Haiti, or whether it's Catherine Ashton. Who represents Europe?
When it comes down to responding to the most dire need of people around the world, whether hit by a disaster or by a conflict, it is me. And on humanitarian matters, Europe actually does speak with one voice. We are seen, respected as a force for good. Europe is 20% of the world economy, but 45 to 50% of the humanitarian assistance.
OK, Mrs. Georgieva, here's a final question for you.
Does further enlargement go against the original idea of the European Union?
Mrs. Georgieva, you're from Bulgaria.
Yes.
You've just recently joined the European Union. We've lost our ideals that we had 50, 60 years ago when this was set up. Does the European Union stand for anything these days?
I certainly hope that the European Union would continue to stand exactly for that value of solidarity. Look, I spent 2/3 of my life dreaming to be part of United Europe, and now here I am. And I think that this is the very best that has happened to me, but I think this is also the very best that has happened to all of us in Europe. We live in a world where size matters again. When we look at China and India, having a 500 million strong economy is much better, believe me, than being small pieces and bits here and there. But I also look at the world that is so much more fragile than during my childhood. Disasters are more frequent, they're more intense, they overwhelm even countries like Japan. Crises are more difficult, and in this world of today and tomorrow, building not only our solidarity, but a global solidarity is paramount for us, and especially for the young people that have been asking me questions today.
Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Georgieva. That was the very first edition of iTalk, so send in your video questions to Euronews, and I'll be here to make sure you get the answers from the people who make the decisions in our continent. See you next time.